The ongoing conflict in Ukraine continues to evolve, marked by escalating military actions and complex diplomatic maneuvers. As recent reports indicate, Ukrainian forces have intensified their drone operations against Russian targets despite claims from Kremlin and Western officials suggesting that Ukraine lacks the capacity to sustain its defense against Russia's military might. This shift in strategy reflects Ukraine's growing confidence and its capability to strike back at the heart of Russian territory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently reaffirmed his position against a ceasefire that would allow Russia to retain the territories it has occupied. The Berlin Wall is not an option, he stated, emphasizing that any cessation of hostilities must not entrench Russia's territorial gains. This sentiment underscores the broader belief among Ukrainian leadership that Russian President Vladimir Putin lacks genuine interest in a peaceful resolution, particularly as Russian forces remain active in the conflict. In tandem with military developments, the geopolitical landscape is also shifting. North Korea has reaffirmed its support for Russia, with reports indicating that Kim Jong-un has expressed solidarity with Moscow in its ongoing military campaign. Following a meeting with Sergei Shoigu, the Russian Security Council Secretary, Kim stated that his government would invariably support Russia in its efforts to protect national sovereignty and territorial integrity. This alliance has been underscored by North Korea's provision of conventional weapons, which reportedly fulfill up to 50% of Russia's artillery needs. On the battlefield, Russian forces continue to conduct strikes across various regions of Ukraine, including a recent attack in Zaporizhzhia that resulted in civilian casualties. Despite hopes for a partial ceasefire during upcoming talks in Saudi Arabia, the reality on the ground suggests that Russian military operations are far from abating. The Kremlin has been accused of using ceasefire negotiations as a tactical ploy to undermine Ukraine's position while continuing its aggressive military strategy. Analysis from the Institute for the Study of War highlights how the Kremlin is manipulating narratives surrounding ceasefire talks. Russian officials have claimed that Ukrainian forces are violating proposed ceasefire terms, a strategy designed to rally domestic support and justify ongoing military actions. This approach not only aims to discredit Ukraine but also seeks to frame Russia as a victim of aggression, thus solidifying internal support for the war. As military and diplomatic efforts unfold, Ukraine's allies are stepping up their support. Germany has recently approved a substantial military aid package totaling €3 billion aimed at strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities. Ukrainian officials remain optimistic, with expectations that continued international support will bolster their position in negotiations and on the battlefield. Looking ahead, the potential for a ceasefire remains uncertain as both sides prepare for intensified discussions. The divergent objectives of Ukraine and Russia create a challenging environment for peace talks, particularly with external influences from allies like North Korea and China complicating the dynamics. The coming weeks will likely be critical as diplomatic efforts unfold in Riyadh, with the hope that a genuine pathway to peace can emerge from the ongoing chaos of war. In a grim reminder of the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, a drone attack on the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia has resulted in the tragic loss of 3 lives, all members of the same family, with an additional 12 individuals injured. This incident occurred on Friday night, March 22, 2025, as Russian forces launched 12 drone strikes on the city, igniting residential buildings, vehicles, and communal structures. Ukrainian officials described the scene as chaotic, with emergency services tirelessly sifting through rubble in search of survivors. This assault seems to contradict a recent agreement between Ukraine and Russia for a limited ceasefire, which had been brokered with the involvement of U.S. President Donald Trump. While the White House indicated that the ceasefire would encompass energy and infrastructure targets, the Kremlin maintained that the agreement pertained narrowly to energy infrastructure. This divergence has raised questions about the clarity and enforceability of the ceasefire, highlighting the complexities of negotiations amid ongoing hostilities. The Ukrainian Air Force reported a total of 179 drone attacks in the latest wave of Russian aggression, with 100 drones intercepted, showcasing the escalating nature of aerial warfare in the region. In contrast, the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed it had successfully downed 47 Ukrainian drones, suggesting a fierce exchange of firepower as both nations leverage drone technology in their military strategies. As the conflict escalates, both sides are engaging in aerial attacks against each other's energy infrastructure. Reports indicate that Ukraine has conducted several drone strikes targeting Russian facilities deep within its borders, including a significant recent attack on the Engels 2 airbase, which is pivotal for Russian strategic operations. Satellite images revealed extensive damage to munitions storage at the base, an area critical for launching missile strikes against Ukrainian territories. The stakes have risen considerably with Trump's recent discussions with both Ukraine and Russia as he attempts to negotiate terms for a ceasefire. However, skepticism remains high among Ukrainians regarding the efficacy of such negotiations. Many question whether any agreement would prevent further Russian advances into Ukrainian territory. Given the historical context of the conflict and the heavy toll it has taken on both nations, on the ground, the humanitarian impact of the conflict continues to mount. The recent drone strikes have not only claimed lives but also inflicted psychological trauma on civilians who face the constant threat of violence in their daily lives. The situation in Kherson, for instance, reveals a community grappling with the brutal realities of war as residents recount how drone pilots target civilians akin to a video game, underscoring the dehumanizing effects of modern warfare. In response to the continued violence, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the eastern Donetsk region, where he met with military commanders to discuss the ongoing defense efforts. The Ukrainian military is ramping up its drone capabilities with plans to significantly increase the procurement of domestic drones in 2025, reflecting an adaptation to the changing nature of warfare. As the conflict continues to unfold, the international community watches closely. The looming possibility of negotiations coupled with ongoing military actions suggests a precarious balance between hope for peace and the harsh realities of war. With both sides entrenched in their positions and the humanitarian situation worsening, the days ahead are likely to be pivotal in determining the future of Ukraine and its struggle for sovereignty against Russian aggression. The resilience of the Ukrainian people remains a testament to their unwavering spirit even as they confront the harsh consequences of this protracted conflict. In the ever-evolving landscape of global politics, the interplay between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump has become a focal point for understanding the complexities surrounding the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Recent reports have shed light on the deeply personal stakes for Putin, particularly as he navigates the turbulent waters of international relations and domestic pressures. As the situation develops, it appears that his motivations are not only strategic but also personal, reflecting a desire to assert Russia's influence on the global stage. Recent drone strikes in the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia, which tragically resulted in the deaths of 3 civilians and injuries to 12 others, underscore the persistence of military aggression despite purported agreements for a limited ceasefire. Ukrainian officials reported that the city was targeted by 12 drones, resulting in extensive damage to residential buildings and infrastructure. Ivan Fedorov, the regional governor, stated residential buildings, private cars and social infrastructure facilities were set on fire, illustrating the devastating impact of these attacks. This incident raises questions about the integrity of ceasefire agreements, especially as conflicting interpretations emerge from the involved parties. The backdrop to this violence is the broader geopolitical dialogue, notably influenced by U.S. President Donald Trump's recent engagements with both Ukrainian and Russian leaders. Amidst these discussions, the U.S. administration announced its commitment to enhancing military support for Ukraine while simultaneously negotiating terms that could reshape the landscape of energy infrastructure in the region. Trump claimed that a full ceasefire might be achievable very soon, reflecting a strong inclination towards diplomatic resolution, albeit amidst skepticism from various quarters about the sincerity of such claims. As the conflict intensifies, Putin's internal narrative appears increasingly intertwined with nationalistic aspirations. His recent interactions with allies such as Serbian officials reveal a concerted effort to frame protests and dissent as orchestrated attempts by Western powers to destabilize Russia. This narrative serves to bolster support for his administration domestically while diverting attention from the repercussions of military actions abroad. Putin's security advisor Sergei Shoigu emphasized the importance of countering what he termed color revolutions, indicative of a broader strategy to consolidate power and minimize dissent. On the ground in Ukraine, the human cost of this conflict continues to mount. Ukrainian soldiers and civilians alike express their pain and confusion over the prolonged conflict, with many questioning the decision-making processes that have led to significant losses. Maria Pankova, a Ukrainian citizen, poignantly remarked, "We just need our territories back, we do not need the Russian one," encapsulating the sentiments of a populace weary of war and eager for resolution. Moreover, the recent assassination attempt on Donald Trump has added an unexpected layer to the dynamics of U.S.-Russia relations. According to Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, Putin even visited a church to pray for Trump, illustrating a personal dimension to their relationship and indicating Putin's hopes for a cooperative dialogue moving forward. Witkoff noted it was such a gracious moment, highlighting the potential for renewed diplomatic engagement between the two powers despite the backdrop of ongoing hostilities. As the international community grapples with these developments, the stakes remain high. The potential for peace hangs in the balance, with both sides expressing divergent views on the terms of any ceasefire. With Trump asserting that negotiations are underway to divide up territories, skepticism about the sincerity of such claims persists, particularly in light of continued military actions. The trajectory of this conflict and the evolving dynamics between global leaders will undoubtedly shape the future of Ukraine and its relations with both Russia and the West. As military and diplomatic maneuvers unfold, the world watches closely, hoping for a resolution that prioritizes human dignity and territorial sovereignty amid the chaos of geopolitical rivalry. In the coming weeks, the outcomes of ongoing discussions and the impact of military strategies will be pivotal in determining whether peace is achievable or if further escalation is inevitable. In the midst of an ongoing war that has fundamentally altered Ukraine's political landscape, President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a striking sartorial choice: he refuses to wear a suit. Since Russia's full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, Zelensky's wardrobe has predominantly consisted of military-style cargo pants, boots, and sweatshirts emblazoned with Ukrainian national symbols. This deliberate choice of attire serves as a powerful message of solidarity with his people and a reminder to the world that Ukraine is still at war. Zelensky's fashion statement is not merely a matter of personal preference, it is deeply symbolic. Elvira Gasanova, a designer whose creations often feature in Zelensky's wardrobe, asserts that when world leaders see him dressed in military style, it signals that Ukraine is at war and I am part of this fight. A call for Zelensky to return to a suit serves as an implicit demand to revert to a conventional political dialogue, suggesting that the time for negotiation has arrived even while the conflict rages on. This wardrobe choice has not been without controversy. During a recent meeting at the White House, Zelensky wore a polo shirt, which prompted a quip from former President Donald Trump, who remarked, "You're all dressed up." Tensions escalated further when right-wing journalist Brian Glenn questioned Zelensky's attire, implying a lack of respect for the office he holds. In a defiant response, Zelensky indicated that he would don a suit only after the war concludes, emphasizing his commitment to his role as a wartime leader. The implications of Zelensky's clothing choices stretch beyond mere fashion. Zoya Zvynyatskivska, a Ukrainian fashion critic, explains that criticisms of attire often serve as a means of domination and humiliation. She suggests that for Trump, who is known for his own distinctive fashion choices, the focus on Zelensky's clothing was an attempt to assert political superiority. Gasanova further elaborates that during wartime, a president embodies not just a political figure but the supreme commander of an army and civilians. A conventional suit would signify a disconnect from the harsh realities faced by Ukrainians on the front lines. Zelensky's decision to maintain his combat look is a calculated move to keep global attention squarely on the ongoing conflict. It underscores the notion that while negotiations and diplomacy are essential, the extraordinary circumstances of war cannot be cloaked in the usual trappings of political normalcy. The president's clothing choices serve as a reminder that Ukraine's struggle continues unabated. However, this nonconformity presents a challenge for diplomatic interactions. Many leaders in the West, including those in Europe and the US, expect a more traditional appearance that aligns with established norms of leadership. This pressure to conform could risk undermining Ukraine's unique narrative in the global arena. Gasanova warns that Zelensky's refusal to embrace conventional sartorial norms could dilute the urgency of Ukraine's plight, transforming it into just another political conflict amid a sea of international diplomacy. As tensions continue to simmer in the region, the situation remains fluid. Zelensky may soon find himself in another high-stakes meeting with Trump where the question of attire will inevitably resurface. Whether he will maintain his commitment to solidarity with his people or yield to diplomatic pressures remains to be seen. In the meantime, the world watches closely, aware that each decision, whether in terms of clothing or policy, carries with it the weight of a nation in crisis.